Hello. This is going to be yet another video on trying to predict the Democratic primary race. Um well, after Super Tuesday, there was a pretty significant Joe Biden win, which is terribly depressing, to say the least. It was mostly moved forward. Mostly what allowed him to win was, of course, the chain of endorsements just before Super Tuesday, and also the fact that two things. Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race, which helped Joe Biden win states like Maine, Massachusetts, and Minnesota. But also, um, there is something to be said about the fact that basically like the entire moderate lane consolidated into Joe Biden, and it was mostly motivated by the minority voters in southern states. You had Joe Biden winning basically every single southern state. It looked a little bit as if Texas might have been a state that Sanders would have been able to win, but that just didn't happen. So it is a very complicated thing to be talking about right now, which is to say, it's difficult to think on how to move forward from here on out, talking about the Democratic primaries and not just be talking about how hard Joe Biden's going to win. Um, we already have the estimates that I put in the last video about the how many super delegates Biden would get. Obviously, he's going to get like roughly 80% of them. You know, so he's already sitting in a very comfortable advantage here, and he's already like about 80 delegates ahead of Sanders. Now, there are some results here which are not finalized, mainly Utah, Colorado, and California. Ironically, and it's weirdly enough, three states that Sanders won, they are not finalized. Also, Texas apparently had some issues with the counting of the votes in some areas, so I don't know how officialized these results will be. But basically, what it came down to is that we what I did with that was simply go and look at the green papers and their estimates for allocation, and use that to allocate the remaining delegates along the other candidates. So of course there might be some change, especially in Utah and Colorado, because only been like 80% of the results released. There might be some changes in Texas and California. Might also see some changes in Wikipedia. There's only 71% of the results tallied up, but according to most of what I'm seeing, the results are already finalized. So I don't know. We'll have to take a look at California along, as more results come out. But essentially, Biden won, and not only that, not only did he win, but he also managed to gain a lot of delegates and put himself ahead of Sanders, which was something that was quite unexpected. It was expected that Sanders would have the momentary win of Super Tuesday, but that would be offset by the other primaries that would be happening afterwards, which would, Mississippi, Missouri, like these would be wins that would start stacking up for Biden because he would have a lot of support there. The problem now is that Biden's other spoiler vote, which was Bloomberg, also dropped out after only winning American Samoa, and Warren dropped out but didn't endorse anybody yet again. So it's a situation where we're going to be looking now at the March 10th primaries and a little bit of the path forward from from the point where we are at right now. But we can basically already assume that, and this is what 538 is saying already. Like the chances that Sanders manages to get even a plurality are so minuscule. So it is something to be said, you know. It is quite depressing, to say the least, to be in this situation because this is a moment where we could be looking at an actual candidate with actual ideas running for office and being the candidate for the Democratic Party. But instead, the Democratic Party just rallied behind the establishment and put in Joe Biden, which I must say is a poor move on their part because Joe Biden is even worse than Hillary Clinton. Because at least Hillary Clinton had some, some pieces to fool around. Like for example, oh, I'm going to be the first female president, and indeed, she did win the popular vote and was only really defeated by Trump by 70,000 votes. But now Joe Biden is just this old white guy with dementia, and he doesn't really have anything to go on except that he was Obama's vice president. But here's the thing: that's the image he has right now. Right now is March 9th. The election is going to be in November. That's a lot of time for that image to be disputed, for that image to be discredited, and for that image to be destroyed and dashed against the wall. The one hope there is in this primary for Sanders and his campaign is essentially to get a very good result out of March 10th, coming in alive until the March 15th debate, and then just duking it out with Biden and being good enough at doing that that people see what Biden is, see that he doesn't really have much of a chance of beating Donald Trump, and see that indeed they should be running with the candidate that actually offers something rather than the candidate that literally is running on saying what they cannot do. So let's take a look at the situation for Sanders and then try to make a prediction based on that. So apparently there was an update again. That they're constantly lowering the number of delegates that Sanders expected to get. I think like the day before yesterday, he was sitting at like 1,600. Um, Gabbard was also. I think at some point she broke the 100 mark here. Like they expected her to get like 100 delegates. The problem here with this campaign is that there's the problem here with these numbers is that I don't really know how the fuck 538 is really managing to get these kinds of numbers because for example, let's take a look at Mississippi. They have an estimate on how many votes are going to go for each of the candidates. Like he's expected to win between 56 and 78% of the vote. Based on what? There are polls. Okay, let's take a look at the polls. Wow, good thing I had a fucking good thing. Good thing I had a backup here. So they have essentially two polls to look at. And this is one that came out yesterday that actually shows that kind of margin for him. But the thing is that even before that, Joe Biden already had that kind of margin on Bernie Sanders. Idaho literally doesn't have polls, and yet they're estimating exactly how much Joe Biden is going to get. This is what's pretty annoying to me. I don't know how the fuck they're getting these numbers. Democrats abroad, how in the hell do they know how many votes are they going to get? Like, this is Democrats abroad. It's not like you can poll these people. It's literally impossible. So I don't know how they're saying that there's going to be this result with this many delegates for each of them. In any case, so looking at Michigan, in Michigan in particular, I wouldn't say that Bernie's chances are so bad because I mean, sure, there have been polls which have been showing like terrible results for Sanders, but there's also others which have shown a much closer race with actually surmountable odds. and these two seem to be the most trustworthy ones. So presumably Sanders is sitting at roughly 40% and Biden is sitting at roughly 50%. What these polls neglect to show, though, because they were collected until March the 8th, is that Jesse Jackson has come out to endorse Bernie Sanders. Now, Jesse Jackson, if you don't know, was a guy that ran in 84 and 88 in the primaries. And he would have been the first presidential candidate to be black. And I think that unlike Obama, who's like actually half black, I think Jesse Jackson would have been the first ever to be full black. It's like both parents are black, and Jesse Jackson came out to endorse Bernie Sanders, which might have something of an effect on Bernie Sanders' black vote. Bernie Sanders also put a lot of energy into Michigan to try and make the election a little closer there. He gave up on Mississippi apparently, so that's going to be complicated. Missouri was is looking a lot closer than one might expect. March 6th shows a poll which has Sanders within the margin of error against Biden, and counting Warren's votes, he would actually win. So this is a very interesting situation to be looking at. And a poll just before that also shows a pretty close race with Warren with 10% of the vote. So with that said, let's try and give an estimate on how the results are going to be. So basically, for Michigan, I'm going to say that Biden's going to get like his roughly 50%, right? And Sanders going to get his roughly 40%. Now, what happens from here on out? These are the expected numbers with these 12 toss-ups going to, I mean, the remaining delegates going along them. Now, I'm going to say that Biden actually underperforms a little bit. Sanders is the one to get those numbers. This might be quite crazy, but um, we did have a similar situation in 2016 where Sanders was like 20 points down in the polls and went on to win Michigan. So that might actually happen. Washington, looking like a very close race. Washington, I'm going to say it is a 55 to 45 divide. Then Missouri. Missouri, I'm going to say that Bernie Sanders gets like 35. Biden gets the rest. And Mississippi, Sanders gets 25. Biden gets the rest. And then we have Idaho and North Dakota. Now, these are two places which are they just don't have any polls at all. And Democrats abroad. So, what I'm going to say with Idaho is that I expect Sanders to win Idaho, but it definitely won't be by much. It might even be like this. Then we have um, then we have North Dakota. So in other words, they're expected to do pretty close. And I'm gonna say it's a pretty even 7-7 split there. And then we have the Democrats abroad, which I'm gonna be honest here. I'm gonna say that Sanders is gonna do a lot better here because this is talking about people abroad. It might even be a little bit better than even this for Sanders. Like the people abroad, I have the idea that they're probably a lot more sympathizing with Sanders. Now, here's how the race would look like if these predictions came true. we'd be looking at a situation where Biden has roughly 80 more delegates than Sanders, and it looks as if his lead is only going to increase from here on out. Like this is a pretty optimistic result for Sanders. Winning three states, tying one, losing two. That's pretty great, and winning Democrats abroad, of course. That's probably like the best case scenario for him, in fact. But now we need to think about what comes afterwards, and that's when the problem really becomes more complicated. Now we have the North Marianas thing. I'm gonna be honest here. It might even be that Gabbard gets a few delegates here. I don't know. Maybe Sanders. It's a really weird one. Then we have Florida, Illinois, Ohio, and Arizona. Now these are particularly complicated, especially for Sanders, because Florida he's doing absolutely horrible. 61-32 right now. So here's the thing. Before this, though, like this is a situation. This is the situation and how it looks like in March 15th, according to my predictions. Bernie Sanders essentially really has to come after Biden. He needs to hit Biden really, really hard in order to stand the most minimal chance. This is the moment where Biden can show the whole world that he's dementia ridden, that he's completely unfit for office, and he's probably going to get removed within like a month of taking office, of being elected maybe, because he's just dead, mentally speaking. This is the moment where Bernie Sanders can really hit him on his record, can really hit him on his reputation, can really hit him everywhere where it hurts. This is the moment where Bernie Sanders can really turn this around and have the most minimal chance of winning. So let's think about it. All right, going in first is Arizona. Now I'm gonna predict that Bernie Sanders does really well. Like this is a best case scenario prediction. All right, just so we actually have a competition until the end. Because otherwise, like for example, if March 10th goes too badly for Bernie, it would take nothing short of a miracle, like Biden just dropping dead, um, for there to be a win for Bernie after that. It would take nothing short of a miracle. So this is I'm mostly doing this prediction and going all the way with it because otherwise there's really not much to predict. It's pointless actually because it's just going to be Biden washing over every state and winning like I don't know like 2,500 delegates and just walking away with it. So Florida. Now Florida is pretty difficult to flip, but we could see a situation where it's a little bit closer. Maybe if Sanders gets like 42, 3-ish or something, 42, and Biden wins, right? Now I have Illinois. What's the situation look like in Illinois? It's also expected that Biden will win. 55-26. So it could look a lot better in Illinois too. It could look something like this, for example. It could be more like a 45-55 split, right? Then we have Ohio, which I'm pretty sure doesn't really have much in terms of polling. Yeah, Biden was winning before everybody dropped out, so presumably he's still winning. But let's say that Ohio goes like 60-40. right? And then we have Arizona. Now, Arizona is the place where Sanders can actually get a win on this day because of the Latino vote. Not looking too good here, though. Not looking too good. This is March 3 and 4, though. So it is pretty bad of a poll, to be honest, because it would be so. Uh, yeah, it is about like Super Tuesday when Biden really did have a big old bump. So I'm gonna say that it's going to be like Sanders might even be able to get an upset win here, just barely. You know, maybe literally by one delegate, for example. And then with this, we would walk into Georgia, which is pretty much a lost cause, I think. Not too much, but Georgia would go like at least 55, 45 for Biden. Then we would have Puerto Rico, which doesn't really have any polls here. Um, so maybe Bernie can even pull a win there. Then we would have Louisiana. Alaska and Wyoming. So Louisiana is definitely a safe pickup for Biden. And we have Hawaii, which Gabbard might close off a race here. Then we have Alaska. Wyoming. And then we have Wisconsin. That's another big one. April 7th. I don't know when they're going to have another debate, but right now it's looking a lot closer here. So it could even be that Bernie actually wins this. So in early April, it would be looking like this. Bernie just barely staying alive in the race and managing to, keep the race alive. Basically, you have New York. Now, New York, do we have polls? Sanders is winning here, but that's before everybody consolidated. So New York, it's really difficult to say at this point. Like apparently New York is something that would vote a lot for Biden, so maybe he wins. It would be the Bloomberg money coming in too. Pennsylvania, where Biden has a lot of home advantage almost. Yeah, it's looking like this. 60-30. Maybe by then it can be 60-40. Maryland. Sanders is winning, but yeah, that's before everybody consolidates too. So presumably, yeah. Connecticut. Do we have polls here? Hmm. I think this is one where there could actually be a small win for Sanders. Rhode Island. Delaware is supposed to be basically a walkover for Biden. So I'm gonna put Sanders at this maybe. Anyway, Kansas and Guam, which are two that just don't have any results. So I'm gonna say that here they split it. In Kansas, just I don't know, man, goes like 45-55 maybe. Indiana, Buttigieg getting what? Damn, this is Indiana. I guess at this point would be pretty evenly split. Oregon is one that Sanders could definitely pick up. Kentucky, that goes for Biden. Then by June, we basically only really have like New Jersey. But sure, Sanders could win. Then have New Mexico, which obviously Sanders could also win. District of Columbia, which I don't know, man. Montana, that one's definitely going Biden. Then we have South Dakota. And then finally the Virgin Islands, and it's over. Which is just whatever. So essentially, Bernie Sanders' best chance is still short of what he would need in order to win the nomination. Here, in fact, the best thing that he managed to do was actually create a contested convention, um, which put Biden like roughly um, 94 delegates behind what he needed. So, but obviously that doesn't matter because Biden doesn't even need like a majority of delegates here to support him. Like he only needs like 55 or so, 55% or so, and he's already the nominee. Sanders, we know at the very best is going to get 20% of the super delegates. The rest goes Biden, and boom, that's a wrap. Even with the super delegates, Bernie gets nowhere close to actually bridging the gap and managing to get the 1990 delegates he would have needed without the super delegates. Even with them, he doesn't get that threshold. So this is one of the reasons why people say that the nomination is pretty much already decided. It would take basically a miracle for Sanders to really stand a chance here. Like it would really take something like Biden just fucking killing himself or something, or just I don't know, like doing something absolutely atrocious to actually lose after this. After winning Super Tuesday like that, and I mean, at this point, here's the thing though, and I'm gonna go on from here. All right. Um, this is the in this case, Biden would win by a contested convention, but let's just assume that Biden outright wins. All right. So, right. So we would have to take a look at the election here to see what would happen between Biden and Trump. Now, what would be the election results between these two? Right. Um, essentially, I think we can say pretty safely that, of course, Texas is not going to be flipping at all. There's no chance in hell that would happen. The Republicans have also suppressed the vote enough here that the chances of that happening are slim. With Biden, um, I'm going to say that Virginia is a bit of a weaker lean. New Hampshire is a toss-up. Um, and I'm going to say that Florida is like a lean red, a likely red state. Like that, Florida's pretty much lost if Biden gets it. Pennsylvania, though, at least will lean blue. I'm gonna put Michigan as a toss-up, and possibly Minnesota too. Though Amy Klobuchar might be the vice presidential nominee, so I might leave it as a lean. This is the situation that we'll be walking into for the election. And I'm gonna be honest here. There might be a situation where we're gonna see people who normally vote Democrat just not turning up to vote. Turnout is going to be atrocious in this election because Trump has been making mistake after mistake, and indeed, one could say that Trump might lose this election despite how badly the Democrats are trying to throw it in his favor, because his response to the coronavirus epidemic has been just oof. They've been horrible to say the very least. And it wouldn't be crazy to say that some of the southern states might become weaker red states, and we could also say that perhaps like um, for example, Maine was a state that was slowly leading blue, leading red. Maybe it's not going to do that anymore. Like a lot of states that would have maybe been toss-ups, they just wouldn't be anymore. So the problem with Biden is that this is going to be a low enthusiasm election, at least on his camp. Trump, whatever you say, at least he energizes his base. So it's going to be a weird situation where I presume that independents are going to be swinging in favor of the Democrat, but at the same time, Trump is the one that's going to be driving turnout. So it's a bit of a weird situation where essentially the Republicans are going to be the ones turning out to vote, but whoever of the but he is a minority. His support is a minority. So it is something to ask how the turnout is going to affect the election in the sense of how badly who's going to be hurting more into this election? I'm going to be honest here. I have no idea how this is going to go because it's pretty much impossible to say. For example, if we were to take a look at the competitive elections, sorry, the very close ones, those states that are colored in as toss-ups are all the ones that were decided by less than 5% of the vote. Um, so it is possible that Joe Biden, if he manages to maintain his image intact, so the scenario that we just saw here doesn't materialize, he just outright wins, and it doesn't. We don't have a situation where Bernie Sanders successfully manages to weaken his image. He's going to be walking here with a very good chance that he might just win North Carolina because of the black vote. He wins Pennsylvania, of course, and probably is going to win Minnesota. Um, it remains to be seen what Maine and New Hampshire are going to be doing, but Florida is definitely going red. And so here are the situations that are left. There's 59 electoral votes up for grabs, and these two states are going to be extremely decisive. I'm going to be honest here. They could very well go red again. And then what's going to happen is that Biden would have to pick up at least Nevada and Arizona, and the entire election would essentially come down to Colorado. Because New Hampshire might just be voting red for the first time in a while. We don't know how this is gonna go, but whatever. But Colorado will literally decide the election here. And we gotta be honest here. The main reason why Hillary Clinton won this election in Colorado was because Gary Johnson ran, and he siphoned 5% of the vote against Trump. 2012, Mitt Romney managed to get within 5 points of Obama. This was a more of a blowout win. 2004, Bush managed to win. In 2000, he also managed to win. 1996, the Republicans won again. 1992, it was a Democrat. So it is a state that swings both ways pretty hard. But it is a pretty complicated situation. And given that this is a state that voted Bernie Sanders in 2016 and also did now, it is a state that might have a significant amount of people just not turning up to vote for the Democrats because they feel like that Biden is just a candidate that doesn't really inspire the voters. And say what you will, the Republican primary still had Trump come out with 620,000 votes. That's about half what he needs here. And that was basically a primary that literally had nothing going for it. I think that the people voted there mostly so that they could pick their um, mostly so they could pick like Republican primary candidates or something. Um, and sure, we have some polls from like August showing that Joe Biden would win, but I don't know. You can take a look at the polls right now, in fact. Right, this is the general results, but we can also take a look at the state ones. So Michigan, Biden's look like is gonna win. Pennsylvania is gonna win. North Carolina, it's look like Biden's gonna win. Florida, Biden might win, but I don't know. Ohio, Wisconsin. Yeah, this is one that might stay with Trump. Minnesota, Iowa. So it is a pretty strange situation. According to the polls, obviously, they would say that Michigan is just going to vote Biden and even Ohio. And then Trump is fucked, basically. And Colorado is also going to go for Biden. But we already know from 2016 that trusting the polls is not exactly a good idea. So it is, to say the least, well, it's going to be a very disappointing election, to say the least. We're going to have two mentally problematic people running. The debates are going to be a fucking joke. And the American people can't really expect much out of Biden. And obviously, they know they can't expect anything from Trump. So, honestly, it is a situation where nobody really wins. It's a very bad election. And it also sets the progressive movement back quite a bit because of people like Warren who helped divide it by just being petty with some bullshit. And instead of endorsing a candidate like Bernie Sanders who just decides to go on Saturday Night Live and do some bullshit. So, you know, as much as Joe Biden uh, kind of has an open path to win the election, even if he doesn't drive turnout as much, it's going to be a situation where, I mean, Trump is self destructing right now. So, technically, it isn't even that Biden's going to beat him, it is that Trump destroyed himself, basically. So, yeah, it is essentially looking like a very weird situation for the election, where we got the worst of both sides, and yeah, it's honestly looking really fucking bad. Like, sure, Biden might win, but if Klobuchar really is going to be his vice president, she's going to be the president because Biden is not going to be able to rule. Like, is probably not even going to be able to take the oath of office because uh, he's not going to be declared mentally fit for that. So we would basically be electing Amy Klobuchar. That's fucking crazy. A candidate that did so fucking poorly in the primaries is just gonna like cruise to victory like that. That's ridiculous. But we'll see. We'll see how things develop. Maybe a miracle does happen. Maybe Biden has a stroke or something. That would be amazing. We'll see. In any case, I'll see you folks next time, and I really hope that something good does happen. See ya.